Today on the Nivlac 57 YouTube channel, we're going to talk about what oil is right for your turbo car. Today we're going to talk all about a subject that is often overlooked or misunderstood, and that is the motor oil that you should run in an engine that you've turbocharged that originally was not turbocharged. We've gotten a lot of questions about this in the past just because we're running what a lot of people consider to be a very heavy oil in our turbocharged Vortec 4200s. So let's talk about oil. What I have here is some Valvoline racing oil. It is their VR1 20W50. Now, every oil that you pick up is going to have some sort of SAE rating, and let's talk about how to decipher that oil rating. Now, there are two key numbers here, and let's talk about the 20 first. Now, a lot of people see this W and they think it means weight, but what it actually means is winter. And what the 20W is actually saying is that the cold temperature performance has a rating of 20. Then we have the -50. What the 50 means with no W, that is the high temperature rating for the oil. Now, some people may be confused and see this and go, well, 50 is bigger than 20, so you're saying the oil gets thicker when it gets hotter? No, that couldn't be further from the truth. All oil, as it increases in temperature, gets thinner or less viscous. And what oil manufacturers do is they have additives, they put zinc and different chemicals into the oil to change how thick or thin it is at those particular temperatures. These two ratings are totally separate from one another. They're just a rating. It's like saying that I got a C in English and an A in mathematics. Two totally different subjects, but you got two different ratings in those two subjects. Now, when turbocharging an engine that was not originally turbocharged from the factory, what you need to look at is the factory oil rating. In the case of our Vortec 4200s, they have a factory oil rating of 5W30. Now, when you add a turbocharger to the engine, you are effectively adding an oil heater to the system. Most turbochargers are oil cooled, and therefore they are putting heat into the oil, and you need to take that into account when selecting your oil. Also, as oil flows through the engine and is circulated through the bearings and all of the systems in the engine, and it gets worked, gets compressed and worked by the bearings, you are going to see more temperature increase when you increase the horsepower output of the engine. In the case of these engines, we are quadrupling the output of the engine. Therefore, you can imagine that the oil temperature gets just a little bit hotter. So let's circle back to the ratings on the oil of your choice. The SAE, or the Society of Automotive Engineers, has defined a standard for oil at two different temperatures, and basically what this 20W50 means is that at a cold temperature, it falls within a certain range of viscosity, and at a higher temperature, it falls within a certain range of viscosity. This viscosity is measured in something called a centistoke. Now, to put this into something that we can more easily understand, water at room temperature has a kinematic viscosity of 1 centistoke. Another example is honey. Honey at room temperature has a kinematic viscosity of 74 centistokes. So what we like to do on our turbocharged engines is we like to look at the factory oil rating on the engine and then assume a certain temperature increase and then run the oil that will match the viscosity at that higher temperature. So with most engines, when you add a turbocharger and quadruple the output, we assume around a 40 Fahrenheit increase to the oil temperature. So if we look at the kinematic viscosity of 5W30 at 190 degrees Fahrenheit, it has a kinematic viscosity of 14.6 centistokes. So 40 degrees hotter would be 230 degrees Fahrenheit. 20W50 would have a kinematic viscosity of 15.3 centistokes. And therefore, we have come to the conclusion that 20W50 is the oil that we should run. We've been doing this for quite a few years. Every single one that we have run 20W50 on has had a perfect looking bearing when we've taken it apart, and knock on wood, that will continue. Now for another example, let's look at my 1963 Studebaker Lark. It has a L83 from a 2014 Silverado, and I am putting a 80mm turbo onto it. The factory oil recommendation for this particular engine is 0W20, and 0W20 has a kinematic viscosity of 11.2 centistokes at 190 degrees Fahrenheit. At 40 degrees hotter than that, 230 degrees Fahrenheit, we find that 10W40 has a kinematic viscosity of 11.9 centistokes. And therefore, I am going to run 10W40 in this engine. But don't take my word for it. Let's see what GM recommends. For a C7 Corvette that is being used for racing, they actually recommend that you change the oil out. The factory rating for average street driving is 0W40, and when you take it racing, they actually recommend that you change the oil out to 15W50. So if GM thinks it's a good idea, then it's probably a good idea. Now, what on earth is a centistoke? Well, don't look at me, I'm asking you.